Hey guys, so we're going to get sowing our November seeds today. So I have got my soil already prepared. So just to let you know what I've done, I've got some pots for my sweet peas, and then I have got some module trays for some of my other seeds and a tiny seed tray. And I'll tell you why I'm doing it slightly differently as we go through. But the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got your seeds and your instructions. If you haven't got your instructions, you can find them on the website. Go to the FAQs page if you lose your seed sowing instructions, and you'll find a link there. And what you want to do always is just have a read through this before you get started, because the echinacea needs to go in the freezer, and that's because it needs some stratification, which just means it needs a really cold period before it can germinate. So go and put it in the freezer now and set a reminder on your phone to get it out in a couple of weeks, and you're going to be able to sow it then. So I've just put mine in the freezer this morning, so I will be a couple of days ahead of you. It's the 30th of October now as I am sowing these seeds for you, so my plan is always just to be a few days ahead so that I can post and show what I'm doing. So have a look down here, because sometimes you'll find some of the seeds can be sown on the surface and some of them have to be sown and covered with soil. So I always like to have a look at that first so I can think about how I want to sow each of the seeds. And just to give you an overview of what I'm going to do today is I'm going to sow my sweet peas in these pots. Now these are like 9cm pots, and what I've found is when I buy these off Amazon, sometimes they are this deep and sometimes they're like teeny tiny ones like this. So as much as you can, get the deepest pots you can, because these sweet peas are going to grow some roots, right? And what I've done is I've potted up, you should have roughly 24 seeds in your pack, and I'm going to sow 2 to a pot. So I'm just going to go for it. I'm not even going to save any till spring. I'm going to just go full out, live dangerously, and I'm going to sow them all now. So these are going to grow. We're going to try and keep them as little as possible on the surface, and they will have as bushy as possible on the surface, and they'll get nice big roots. We'll keep them under cover. Same with all of these. We're going to keep them under cover once we've sown them until we plant them out into the garden, okay, which will be next spring, and I'll tell you when we're going to be doing that. But if you haven't got, so either you might have a small little zippy greenhouse. I'll show you, I'll put a link onto this to my greenhouse setup so you can see what I've got. I have a really cheap little plastic thing I bought last year, and it's going strong, and it will for many years to come, and it's plenty big enough for me to be growing and giving like 100 bunch of flowers. So you don't need any more than that. If you've got literally no room to buy one of the little stacky greenhouses, then just anywhere in the garden that's sheltered. So if you can find somewhere that's sort of in a corner in a porch, or like we've got one little piece of the patio that's slightly sheltered under the eaves, or you could rig up like an old glass, I don't know, shower door or something, just so that it's got some protection from the rain, because that's when the rain is heavy, it'll just squish your seedlings otherwise. But the temperatures, these are all hardy, so they can handle the cold and the frost. But what you will want to do is when it gets really cold is whip some fleece over them, some horticultural fleece, just to make sure that they don't totally vanish and die before you get to the next year. But we'll come to that as the temperatures drop, okay? So what we're going to start off with now is the sweet peas. So you're just going to get a view of my middle for most of this so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got my sweet peas here, and all I'm going to do is I've actually bought myself a little dibber thing, feeling very professional, but I haven't got it with me now, so I'll just show you how I normally do it without. For some reason it's always really windy out here when I'm trying to sow seeds for you guys. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put one and pop him in, and get another one the other side, and pop him in. Right, so I've got 2 in there. Some people will just say to sow 1. Some people say to sow 3. Some people say 2. Sometimes I just sow 1, but I'm actually, I was thinking about only doing 1, but actually I'm going to do 2, and then I'm going to plant them in pairs in my garden when they go out into the garden next year. So I'm going to do them in 2s in this 9-inch pot. So you can experiment if you want and see what works for you, but doing them in pairs is quite nice. So I have got some root trainers, which are special things for sweet peas, but I'll get those out next month and show you. I just wanted to use something that probably most of you are able to get your hands on. So a pot like this, because hopefully we won't have to prick them out, we won't have to do anything with them. They can just sit in here all winter, and then we'll put them out into the garden. Now I'm going to forget that that's the one that I've done, so I'm just going to carry on. I won't make you watch me do all of them, but do this one and this one. And the other thing I should have said before I started is you need to label your pots, right? So I've got some labels in my pocket, and I am going to label these, and you'll see I'm actually going to put the labels in before I go any further. Well, now I've started sowing, I'm going to carry on sowing. I'm going to label these before I do anything else, because the number of you that post in the Facebook group and say, and you know who you are, that post in the Facebook group and say, oh, I don't know what these seeds are, my labels have all dropped off, or I forgot to label them, so what are these? And then we're all in Facebook group trying to identify these little seedlings that all, quite frankly, look the same, and it's really hard to do. So I'll just keep saying while I'm talking to you, but this mix, you can see there's some white bits in it, and so what you can do, you don't have to do this, but you can include a bit of perlite or vermiculite or grit, horticultural grit, to your compost. It just helps with the drainage, which just means it means the water doesn't get all clagged up. You're less likely to get that kind of mouldy, greeny thing that sometimes can appear on the top of your seeds when it's just clogged up with water. And it just means that it does hold the water, so that you don't have to water them quite as often. It's got some good drainage in there. Now with these sweet peas, what I will say is you are going to have to watch me do all of them. You can't see these ones, they're just off camera. I'm in a race against the rain this morning to get these done for you before it really starts chucking it down. Right, so the thing that you need to know about sweet peas is the mice love them. Right, they like nothing better than a sweet pea. This is like the best thing they could possibly eat. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to put them in the kitchen. You want these in the kitchen, or if you put them in the greenhouse, you want to put them right on the top shelf where no mice can get them. Okay, like you really, really want to keep these things away from the mice. So you see, I haven't sowed them particularly deep, like kind of a finger squidge deep. Very technical. Actually, I've got a few more in my packet there, so I actually am going to save those ones till spring. So what we're going to do is we are going to put these, I'm going to put these in the kitchen, and as soon as they start germinating, even like a couple of them start popping their heads up, they're going out into my greenhouse, into the highest, onto the highest shelf away from the mice. And the reason for that is, what I see the number one mistake, what I did when I first had my sweet peas, is leaving them inside for too long. And what will happen is they will shoot up, they'll get really tall and skinny and leggy, they'll just start falling over, there won't be strong plants. I mean, they'll survive, mine did, most of them, but they just won't be as healthy as they could be. And so what you want to do is, as soon as you see them starting to come up, get them outside. Treat these things really, really mean, because you want big roots and not much growth going on here, okay? And what happens is if you leave them inside, they start leaning towards, it's not actually, but they look like they're leaning towards to try and find the light. There's not enough light inside. No road noises going on. There's not enough light outside, and so they won't have enough. So get them outside, get them in the greenhouse, get them outside, but away from mice. Okay, they're safe from mice when they're about kind of that big. They stop being quite so tasty. But yeah, that's sweet peas. Any questions, just post in the Facebook group. So in this one, I wanted to do what am I doing in here? I am going to do calendula and dill in here. So I don't need a whole tray of these, and I want more than just like 3. So let me do what I said I was going to do and label these. So I'm going to put dill, I'm going to put today's date, so I remember when I sowed them. I mean it, you will forget. I'm going to do a bit of dill, and what was the other one? Calendula. I'm going to do slightly more calendula. th of the 10th. Right, so I'll put those other labels in a moment. Like I said, I'm going to race against the rain, but do not forget to label these because you won't remember what they are. So with the dill, now I just want to sow, if I can, you've got like 175 of these, you've got so many of them. Obviously, please do not sow 175 dill plants unless you're feeling absolutely crazy. So all I'm going to do is I literally just make a tiny little hole. I'm going to drop a dill seed in, and then I'm just going to cover it over. The other way of doing it is just dropping them on the surface and then sprinkling a bit of compost over, okay? So you always want to just cover them really lightly. Preferably don't do it outside when it's windy like it is here, because that isn't helpful. Now actually I just want to, oh, 2 got in there. I'll have to throw one away if I do that. So the germination rate on these seeds is usually really quite good. So we shouldn't have to sow too many, but what happens is if one of these doesn't come up, you know, you want to give them a good 2-3 weeks. If one of them doesn't come up, you just want to pop another seed in, okay, and have another go. Now, what I did do there, as you didn't see, but I've got a big lump of something there. I'm just going to take that off the top of my seed because he won't like that when he's trying to grow. Now, my compost is already quite damp, but once we've sowed these, what you would do is give them quite a good water. You don't want them sopping wet, but you always want your compost to be moist but not damp. And especially at this time of the year, it's quite warm still, it's very wet, and inside your greenhouse what you'll find is that it gets really loads of condensation, so you need to open it every day, and you risk what's called damping off disease, which is where your seeds, like, they grow and they just fall over, right, and they're dead, and you don't know why, and that's why. It's because they got too warm and too damp. So you need loads of ventilation, you need to make sure they're getting lots of air. So I know some of you are growing inside like plastic boxes and stuff, so you just need to make sure they're getting plenty of air, otherwise they will all damp off and then you need to throw the soil away. If they get damping off disease, you need to throw the soil away. You need to really clean that pot before you resow another seed, okay, because it's a bit of a nasty. Right, I'm going to move on to, I'm going to pause and go inside because it is raining now. Right, I'm back. I've moved myself inside on top of the log pile, which is, I don't have many, I don't have a potting shed or a space in the greenhouse I can go in and record this really, so I'm crouching down doing it in here. So I've put the rest of my labels in anyway, and discovered, I don't know if you knew this, you know how these things are really hard to write on, these labels, right? I always want to write in pencil if I can, because I want to be able to reuse these. I'm a big believer in not chucking away plastic, so I don't really want to write on that with a proper pen. I want to write on it with a pencil, but some of them you get are so skiddy and awful. This is what I realised just now. When they get wet, they're much easier to write on, as I realised in the rain outside. So there you go, top tip from today. So my calendula seeds, we're just going to do the same as we did with the dill. So very carefully tip them into your hand. These things are so cool. They're really cute little curly things. So I'm just going to pop those, one in each again. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I just literally make a little hole with my finger, pop them in, cover them over, firm the soil down. There is something crawling around in here, creeping around in here I can hear. So if I run out screaming in a minute, it's because a huge rat has run out. Right, so here we go. So now the thing is with calendula is these are the like big orange, tall orange, not tall actually, about 60 centimetres high, beautiful marigold flowers. So they're orange, they're an orangey colour. Indian prints, these ones are called. And these, you can grow them in pots, you can grow them, you can grow them in containers, you can grow them in window boxes. So if you are growing containers, this is a good one to put into containers. And they have like medicinal purposes, and you can eat them and all kinds of things like that, but Google it, don't take my word for it, do your research before you start taking these. you know, you can use them on your skin and all sorts of things, calendula. They're also often used for companion planting, and that just means, I didn't know what that meant, but I found out, it means that you can plant them near other plants that aphids really like, because aphids will go near these and they'll kind of distract the aphids away from your other plants that really love, that aphids really love as well, so a good kind of distraction. Again, what I'm going to do is, I don't want to bring my watering can in here, but I will water over these just really gently with a fine watering hose, because you don't want to knock the seeds out. You don't want to, these are they're not really tiny like snapdragon seeds, but you want to make sure they stay where you've put them basically. So give them a watering with a fine watering hose, and put those in the greenhouse or inside the kitchen. I love having mine in the kitchen because I love seeing them when they just start germinating. But again, like the sweet peas, as soon as they germinate, get them out into the greenhouse or get them outside. I know it feels hard. I know it feels like, well, it's cold outside, I don't want to put them outside. But these are hardy annuals. They're hardy seeds. So they need, it's like the cold is good for them. They thrive in it. I've noticed the ones I've got out in the garden at the moment, like as the temperatures drop, they're thriving. They love it. Don't mollycoddle them. They won't thank you for it. Okay, and then here what I've done is, so my echinacea has gone into the freezer. Now echinacea is the cone flower, right? So it's the beautiful kind of like, I'll put some pictures up at the end of this video. It's like a pinky daisy almost flower, and we'll talk more about that when we come to sow it. Always featured on Gardeners World every week. I think they always have an echinacea on. So now we've got Echinops, slightly different packaging for this one. And what we're going to do with this is like the blue thistly plant, and it's a perennial, which is slightly different from the other ones we've sown so far. So it means that this one will come back year after year. It will self-seed, and it will keep coming back year after year after year. It's a great one for the back of a border if you're using it in kind of an ornamental garden. Because it gets really tall, but it's a big blue thistle with beautiful foliage as well. So I'm really excited about growing this one. So what we are going to do, let's see if there's anything else that I wanted to tell you about these. Yeah, so what we're going to do is these ones are slightly different. So I'm doing these in a seed tray because I want to be able to show you what it means to be able to pot them on, right? Prick them out and pot them on. And I can't do that if I put them straight into a pot. So these ones are going into a seed tray. You can sow these directly into pots or modules as you choose, if you prefer to do it that way. I'm just doing it so I can show you what it means to prick something out when they get a bit bigger. So what we're going to do with these are slightly different. So we sow them, they go into tiny little seedlings. We will then, everywhere I've seen, the advice is to pot them on for a year before you put them out into the garden. So I think we'll just be moving these into bigger and bigger pots until we put them out next autumn. So I will let you know if I find out different from that, but everywhere I've looked, it's no, you need to pot them on for a year. If you know different from that, let me know. It's my first time growing these. So I'm following the instructions and experimenting and figuring out as we go. Oh, excuse my knees. So all I'm going to do with these is these need, what you'll find with plants that self-seed is when they self-seed, they don't go in with a dibber and do a little hole and make sure that the soil is covering them over. When plants self-seed, they just scatter their seeds over the surface of the soil. So these ones, they do need some light to germinate. So really cover them so lightly with soil, or maybe a handful of vermiculite. I think that's what I'm going to do with these actually, is maybe just put some vermiculite over the top so they still have got cover to hold some water in, but actually, I'm not going to do that because most of you don't have that, especially if we go into lockdown. So actually, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in. I'm just going to put them in. Now, this is like a half tray, and the reason I've got a half tray is I wanted to do a half tray of Echinops and a half tray of Echinacea, because I want to be able to move these things around in and out of greenhouses and in and out of outside independently of each other. And what happens is if you sow a module tray, as you've probably discovered, if you sow a module tray with like 5 different varieties of flowers in, then when some of them will germinate before the others, and you're like, when do I take it outside? When do I not take it outside? And that's fine, because I normally just take them outside as soon as the first ones start germinating. Whoever goes first wins, kind of thing, and everything else will still germinate, or just do it a bit slow when it's outside. But with these, because we're growing them slightly differently, I just wanted them to have their own independent space, really. Don't ask me why, just a hunch. So I'm actually, in this half tray, I'm going to sow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that gives me a couple left over to also sow in the spring next year. Because all you can do with all of these autumn seeds is you can actually sow them again in the spring, which just means you'll have a crop for more of the year. So there you go. So all I'm going to do is I'm literally, because I do so many of them, like if you're a proper flower farm, you haven't got time to faff around with this when you're doing hundreds of them, right? But I'm just by hand, I'm just poking them in, covering them really, really lightly, making sure there's a bit of light. You know, they're literally just pretty much on the surface here. Tiny little grains of soil going over the top of them. Now again, this soil is quite damp thanks to the rain. But if it wasn't, I would again put the water it with a fine watering hose. These ones I'm actually just I think I'm just gonna put these in the greenhouse, because I've only got a little bit in my kitchen that my cats can't get to. So my sweet peas and my calendula and my dill are gonna take priority there. And as soon as those have popped up, if these haven't popped up by then, I might bring them in, I'll see. And then what we're gonna do, we'll come back in a couple of weeks and sow our echinacea. Okay, so we haven't forgotten all about it. So I hope that's been helpful. Sorry about the rain interruption there. And you can use anything when you're sowing, right? So you can use old food trays. If we do end up going to lockdown, which looks quite likely at the moment, looking at today's news, just use whatever you've got. Use old yogurt pots, use old meat trays, whatever you want. Just clean it. Make sure you've got holes in the bottom for some drainage. Otherwise, you need the drainage holes. And make do with what you've got, guys. Like, don't worry if the garden centre closes and you can't get what you need. Do buy as much compost as you can, because last time we were in lockdown that was really problematic. The seeds, if you're part of the flower club, they will keep coming to you through the post, so you don't have to go out to buy them. Every month you'll just get a new box through your letterbox. And just to so just make do with what you've got wherever you are, right? You don't have to have it all perfect when you're just getting going. Literally anything that will hold soil is your friend. All right, I hope that's been helpful. Can't wait to see your little pictures. Post them in the Facebook group once you've sowed. Show me your little picture just like this. I love seeing them. All right, take care. Bye.